Well, I'm about to pass out. I don't know about you. Thank you for being upright, most of you anyway. I realized when I was going over my talk, and thank you, Jenny, for reading off the title of my talk. I thought, man, that's the longest title on the program. So my title slide here is, I paraphrase it. So, pushing the boundary, updated Jepson Klamath Range subdivision better represents reality and other good things happen afterwards. So let me set a couple of expectations for this talk. One is, this is essentially a data-free presentation. So I don't think any of you really wants to learn anything hard or new at this point. And also, as an outgrowth of that, and the fact that it's the last one, I'm not taking any questions. Okay? Okay, so this represents the successful completion of 20 years of work, and you may not notice what that means, but the Klamath Range boundary changed from its earlier configuration in the frontispiece of the Jepson manual to this polygon shape. And many people are wildly ecstatic over this result. So just recognize that this is a really great thing, and a lot of people worked hard to make this happen. So this is how it started. Was the original Klamath Range boundary, and I recognize that those labels, you can't read them, but the purple polygon is the Klamath Range. So the initial Klamath Range boundary, the eastern boundary runs pretty much north-south up Interstate 5. The red arrow there on the left picture points to the margin of, it points to Interstate 5 and the edge of Shasta Lake. So the map on the right, the oval surrounds what is the new added part of the Klamath Range that was appended and now represents the current configuration of the Klamath Range polygon in the Jepson manual. And I say the Jepson map, but it also is used in Calflora and a number of other applications, and so it has become the standard configuration for the Klamath Range for the various applications that we all use. And it started out just trying to bring that map into compliance with this basic concept of the Klamath Range as being inherently volcanic. So the people that work in this area, in the crosshatched area on the left, there is what we were calling the disputed area, which is, we think it's Klamath, you think it's Cascades, but if you see the red star there, you know, look at that big hunk of limestone on the right. I mean, does that look volcanic to you? Doesn't look volcanic to me. So there, we were confused. You know, those of us who are up in the rural part of you know, I mean, Shasta County, we have kind of low self-esteem. So we're thinking, well, maybe we just don't understand what volcanic is. So we recognized early on, those of us working in that area, that the Jepson Klamath Range boundary was off. But at that point, the tools really didn't exist to fix it easily. And think of all the people that labored mightily to produce the Jepson manual. Do you think they really wanted to go back to the drawing board at that point? It just wasn't the right time. So we waited. So how to fix it? Well, use the internet, duh. I like the alternative phrase that was developed by my friends Dana Morowitz and Sky Thompson. Instead of saying, Google it, they say, let's consult the elders. So there's all kinds of great stuff now out there that makes it really easy to communicate with other people and say, here, it's not just my stupid opinion. You know, Shasta County person, there's actually cool stuff from USGS, and look, there's this book that was done by a bunch of really smart people, and they're saying the same thing that I'm saying, so hey. So these are two of my favorites. The map on the left is, it's downloadable both as geospatial data that can be used in a GIS program, and also as a PDF from the U.S. Geological Service called A Tapestry of Time and Terrain. And it shows beautifully, I'll show you the legend in the next slide, but it basically shows landforms and the underlying age of the substrates. And it's really pretty. The one on the lower right there is from a document that was published by the USDA. It was a collaboration by the Forest Service and NRCS, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, and they looked at a combination of soils, bedrock geology, and vegetation to draw their lines around ecological subregions in California. And the polygons are tiered off of a nationwide effort that is then stepped down to smaller areas. So there's a natural progression of nationwide to region-wide and then to floristic area kind of smaller polygons. And each one of these areas, like if you zoom in on the Klamath Range as it's shown there in the brown polygon, the Klamath Range is made up of, I forget how many, 16 or so sub-regions. That there's one for the Scott Eddy Mountains and another one for the Eastern Klamath Range, which is the one that we're talking about today. So, the simplified legend is newer rocks on top, older rocks on the bottom. You can see from this geologic map that the Klamath Range is mostly older rocks, and it's bounded on the east, north, and south by those light yellow to cream colored rocks, which are the newer volcanics of the Cascades. And you also notice, Len brought it up earlier, you might have missed it, that there's this interesting Cascades gap, and then the northern Sierra Nevada down the Sierra, in this depiction anyway, looks remarkably similar in terms of age and general pattern to the Klamath Range. So we think there's some affinity there. But the reason I like this best is it supports my opinion that the disputed territory is not volcanic. Okay, so the oval on the left is around the same general area as the crosshatched area on the right that has the red arrow to it. That is the area that we were wanting to see appended to the Klamath Range. Okay. So, I guess it's been 2 or 3 years ago we started raising the idea again, since there are all these new tools that are available, including the wonderful consortium of California herbaria and the records that can be accessed and corrected and argued over there. And so several people that were familiar with the flora of the area, including Len Lindstrand and Dean Taylor and I, started talking with the Jepson staff, a number of people there, including David Baxter, who manages the herbarium records. And we decided that it really was the time that we could make this happen, because what needed to happen was not only make a new boundary and decide where that should go, but of course changing the boundary has ramifications for the flora itself and the description, both the narrative description and the appearance of the consortium records for those taxa that are in that changed area. And David thought that it was doable if we could agree, that is the people that were familiar locally, since it's a relatively under-collected area, we couldn't rely entirely on consortium records, but we needed to just vet it based on what we knew otherwise. But he came up with this list of about 230 taxa that then we looked at and said, yes, you need to add KR or subtract the Cascade Range based on where the new boundary was. And at the end of our process, which took, I don't know, 6 or 8 months, I would guess, we had 113 of those tags, so that we did have a change in the text string that shows in the e-flora. And not surprisingly, 31 of those became Klamath Range endemics that before that had shown in their geographic range description Klamath Range and Cascade Range. So this is my problem. Now raise your hand if you're an introvert. Okay. How many of you hate talking on the phone? Yay, yeah. If you want to talk to me, don't call me, because I don't answer. But if you text me, I'll answer, or if you email me, I'll answer you, and probably right away. It's just, I don't know, there's something, I feel assaulted when I call on the phone. Because it rings, and it's like, I don't know what I'm going to say. I just don't. But I understand that in order to get this work done, it's necessary to communicate with other humans. So, how do we communicate with each other? And by the way, we also discovered that the consortium data were just woefully inadequate. So please, I mean people, just get out there and collect stuff. So, we talked a lot via email. We had a few conference calls. We met once at the last symposium meeting here. We met at the Herbarium, I think once. And I really enjoy going out with other people that work in my area, especially if they've spent 3 years doing all the work and then they just take me out to show me. And I get to take a picture and say, yay. So this is Lynn Lindstrand and one of the people that works for him. I think this is Sarah. Is this Sarah Tona? We were out looking at Erythranthe taylori, one of the new species that is from the area. Another cool thing, tool that's available now through the consortium is, whereas in the past, if I found a record that I thought was wrong or just didn't make sense to me, you know, I would have to call someone that I didn't know in a faraway place, or write them a letter and say, I think this is wrong, you know, can I look at the specimen? And these days, you know, you go on the consortium site, you see a weirdo like that little yellow flag down there, you look at the specimen accession number, it says GH something or other, which means this is at the Gray Herbarium, which is at Harvard. And you look up the contact, and I sent the guy an email and said, would you please run this through the Pensman key again? I think it's wrong. Or alternatively, would you send me a digital image? And 12 hours later, he sent me this high-resolution digital image. I was able to key it based on the image, determine that it was not Pensman filiformis, but actually the more widespread Heterophilus. Got back to him, and he said, hey, I'll annotate it for you. I mean, how great is that? I'm not going to Boston. It was so easy. So, based on the boundary change, we also saw that a number of things made a lot more sense. So here we have Shasta snowwreath, Neviusia cliftonii, is now a Klamath Range endemic, rather than before. You can see I-5 up the middle of that map. All the stuff that was to the east of I-5 would have been called Klamath Range. And it's not. So, my premise is this is the best time ever to be an introverted person who doesn't like driving in cities, person who's not affiliated with the university, doesn't have a PhD. I can still do stuff. So, my request to you is to please do these things. Okay. This requires a little paradigm shift. If the key doesn't work, it probably is wrong. So I have spent the last 25 years keying out this maidenhair fern. Half the time I would key it to Jordanii, half the time I would key it to Capulus veneris. Never really was very satisfied with the key. I just thought I was bad at it. Turns out it's Adiantum chastense. Yay. So don't automatically assume that you just don't know what you're doing. Consultant expert. I called up Steve Schoenig when I found this monkey flower I couldn't identify. And he came up, bless his heart, and he said, he looked at it and he said, oh, I don't know what it is either. But we had a very nice day, and we collected some specimens, and I don't know, a year or two later, Guy Neeson in Texas used my misidentified specimen as one of the specimens that he cited in his paper, naming Erythranthe taylori. So just, you know, get over your embarrassment about being wrong. Please collect things. I know it's kind of a retro activity. It hasn't changed much since, what, Linnaeus? Still really useful. Still really useful. So the great thing about digital photography is that if you take enough photos, even if you're really a shitty photographer, a few of them will be pretty good, okay? So just take a bunch of photos, delete the ones that aren't any good, and upload the other ones so that the rest of us can have something to look at when we say, well, what does that even look like? I've never seen that before. What does it even look like? And by the way, this is one of the premises of the whole sedum overhaul that's been in the works, is not only one, but 3 really bad keys, and now it turns out that there are about 8 new taxa. So, follow the yellow flags, which means if you see things in the consortium data that don't seem right to you, track them down. And start where you know so that you can recognize what should be there and what's odd. So thanks to my collaborators, this is Len Lindstrand in a classic mansplaining pose, I would say. And you can look at the look on my face and I'm either very skeptical or totally gullible. Thank you to my field collaborators and our Jepson friends that made this change possible. And with that,